This is Greg Strange at the Institute of Directors with the latest of our business podcasts, and with us today is the Chief Economist of the IoD, Graeme Leach. Well, Graeme, it's interest rates again, almost inevitably. The Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee has cut the rate to 5%. Just how worried should we in business be at a time like this?
Well, business shouldn't be as worried as the media would have us believe, but also we can't be as confident as we'd like to be at this stage of the economic cycle. I think the best analogy at present for the UK economy is as if we're walking along a mountain ridge and there's a gentle escarpment on one side and there's a steep drop, a precipice on the other. Now, the ridge is narrowing as well, and so we're getting closer to the edge. It doesn't mean we'll fall down the steep bit, but it's getting closer and closer. And we're not yet in the US situation. We can't cut interest rates aggressively yet because we still need to be mindful of inflation. But things are getting decidedly hairy out there.
So, is there going to be a recession?
The big question. I think there are three reasons where we should be concerned, and there are three triggers business needs to look out for, and there are also three reassurances out there. In terms of the triggers, the trigger here, one of the most obvious ones would be if there begins to be a labour market shakeout. Beyond the financial services sector, if we begin to see employment falling, then we've got to be worried because that could interact with the housing market and that could all spiral in a downward negative sense. The second factor there is if there is an increase in precautionary behaviour, if consumers get more cautious. Savings are at nearly 40-year lows, debt levels are very high, and so if we get a burst of precautionary behaviour, if that interacts with the housing market as well, then we've got some clear grounds for concern. And the third factor, and something which could really upset the economic story for 2008-9 as well, is what we call the monetary policy transmission mechanism. Sounds a bit gobbledygook, but it's basically how do interest rates impact on the economy. Now, one aspect here could be if consumers become cautious, then they don't respond to low interest rates, they don't increase borrowing or spending as a result. But there's another aspect to that which is beginning to develop at the moment, and that is that the monetary policy transmission mechanism is being dysfunctional. In other words, the Bank of England's cutting interest rates, but it's not necessarily being passed on to consumers as well. That's not a systemic threat at the moment, but there are signs of that for various financial institutions. If that becomes more widespread and it interacts with maybe a labour market shakeout or a spike in precautionary behaviour, then we've got real grounds for concern. But thankfully, we've got three areas of reassurance as well. The first is that the inflationary threat, while still there, is by no means as severe as in the early 1990s, for example, when inflation nudged double digits. The second factor for confidence as well is the corporate sector, again, outside of the financial sector, is in much better shape. It entered the last recession with a big deficit. At this stage, looking at the corporate sector, they're in big surplus. So there's a big contrast there in the corporate sector's performance. I say outside of the financial sector, though, obviously there is a problem within the financial sector. And the third factor, which is different this time around, is that we're not in the ERM. In the early 1990s, we couldn't cut interest rates when we needed to kickstart the economy and the housing market. This time around, we don't have that constraint. So three grounds for concern, three reasons for reassurance as well. What will be the outturn? We honestly don't know.